Nintendo loves their franchises, if their names are Mario, Zelda, Kirby, Fire Emblem, or Splatoon. And if they're feeling nice, maybe Metroid will be allowed to come outside and play just this one more time. Everything else, they're there, you know? They do in fact have games. Look, I understand that some franchises just lose their steam or fade from popularity, but if there is one franchise that I think has gotten the most screwed over by Nintendo, it's Star Fox. At every opportunity, it feels like Nintendo has crippled this series, just completely kneecapped it in any way that it can grow. Wherever there's an opportunity, we just get the same thing. Let me for a moment explain my less than positive disposition. You see the game on screen? StarFox 64, right? You probably like that game, or at least know about it. Now, did you know that StarFox 64 is actually a remake of the original Star Fox on Super Nintendo? You probably did, but let me finish. Now, what's this game? Oh yeah, Star Fox 64 3D. Yeah, the remaster, or I guess remake, they made for the 3DS. You know, it's pretty much the same game, but that's the point. It's meant to be the N64 classic running on a 3DS. And this game is Star Fox Zero for the Wii U. It's not a prequel, or a sequel, or a spiritual successor. It's a remake of Star Fox 64, the game that was a remake of the first Star Fox that had already been remade on the 3DS 5 years before this one. Okay, I guess we'll just have to accept this. For about a decade now, the Star Fox franchise has remained pretty much dormant. Though for some reason, there was this guy that looked oddly like Fox McCloud in the Mario Galaxy movie. But nah, that's just them being cheeky, right? They wouldn't actually give us a new Star Fox, right? Wait, no, it's not possible. Am I feeling hope? Am I feeling...
This game is called Star Fox.
Oh man, it's a remake of Star Fox 64 again. Oh, Corneria looks cool. I guess the graphics look kinda nice. Falco looks like KFC had their way with him, but I guess it's kinda cool. Man, can I be honest with you guys for a moment? Do you remember when Star Fox was treated with the same reverence as Nintendo's other properties? You know, when they'd actually try to do things with this series? Well, I do. And what's crazy is, they had the game that could have been their blueprint for the rest of the series. A game that, maybe with some more iterations to build upon its foundation, could have made for a vibrant, experimental, and distinct franchise. And what was that game? Well, that game is StarFox Assault. Look, before you guys call me a Debbie Downer or not a real Star Fox fan, I want to say this. I hope the remake does well, and I hope that it'll change my mind, but I've also been burned by that hype before. This already happened with the previous times they've remade Star Fox 64. It's not even that the remakes are terrible games, but they never seem to catch on the way Nintendo thinks they will. Personally, it feels so odd to me that they've tried this exact formula so many times and yet it almost never works. Like, okay, remaking the original Star Fox on the N64 was a valid concept. It was the game that could fully realize what the original SNES game was even trying to get at. It allowed for creative expression and for one of the most unique rail shooters and flight combat games ever made. It's easily one of the best games on the N64's lineup. And from there, Nintendo took some strange detours. Star Fox Adventures is... Star Fox Adventures. I'm not gonna really bring up that game too much because it's a dead horse at this point. Actually, it's not even a dead horse. It's a smeared burn stained on the floor, like a memory charred into our psyche. They also did Star Fox Command, which I haven't played, but I heard it combined elements of the usual Star Fox gameplay with RTS elements? Sounds cool, but I can't really give my opinion on it. So why exactly am I talking about Star Fox Assault? Well, like I said, I think this game should have been the jumping pad for future Star Fox games. I'm not saying every game after it had to be exactly like it, but it provided a good springboard for future games. Oddly enough, this game was made as a collaboration between Namco and Nintendo. I'd say that's odd, but Nintendo collaborated quite a few times with other companies during the GameCube's lifespan. They worked with Sega to make F-Zero GX, the best F-Zero game, and even worked with Capcom to have a few of their games as exclusives, like Resident Evil 1's remake, or even RE4 for a little bit. In a way, this game set up the precedent for Star Fox to be a collaborative series between Nintendo and other developers. They did this again with Star Fox Zero on Platinum Games, so that's something. Honestly, I think Nintendo needs to be way more willing for collaboration in general, because when they do, it usually results in their best or most interesting stuff. Metroid Prime, Donkey Kong Country Returns, Punch-Out Wii, Pokken Tournament, You see what I mean? Really, I think Namco could have easily been the second parent of the Star Fox series, or at least the chill uncle that lets Star Fox drink soda and watch horror movies. Plus, Namco had already been the developers of Ace Combat for years at this point. I've never played Ace Combat, but all my friends tell me that series is great. But enough yapping about who made the game. Let's talk about the game and why it should have been the future of the series. For one, it does something that I think the series needs to do: expand the story. Here we have a story that isn't just, oh no, Andross is back. Instead, we're faced with a new threat that I actually think is far more interesting than Andross could be. The Aporoids, a species of these eldritch biomechanical beings. Just looking at these things, you could tell they're terrifying, but also look really cool. The very concept of the species allows for so many different ideas. Do you need enemy fighters to shoot? They're Aporoids in the form of spaceships. Need a boss? An Aporoid that just takes on a strange form. And since they're biomechanical, you can use that to make so many different approaches to gameplay. They're both machine and living things. You get the best of both worlds. They also expand upon the world in some interesting ways too. For example, Crystal is now on the team as a full-on pilot, while Peppy is now their guy in the chair. This is a good step to take the characters. It sort of feels like the characters are aging and gaining experience in real time. Sure, their personalities stay generally the same, but switching some of these positions around allows for some dynamic storytelling with the characters. Even Starwolf is different this time, Pigma being completely gone and now with a new member named Panther. There isn't really much to say about that except he's really into women. We're also shown that the Andross Empire is on its last legs, with Andrew, Andross's nephew, trying to take the reins unsuccessfully. He's instantly killed in the first mission, but hey, I can't act like he didn't at least try. But this shows that the world of Star Fox can change and evolve. Say what you will, but other Nintendo series have done this over time. Sure, Mario will always fight Bowser for Peach, but over the years, more and more ideas have been added. New locations, characters, power-ups, and more. Of course, these changes also came from innovation of gameplay, and Assault brings that in spades. You see, Assault isn't just a game that is purely interested in keeping you in the R-Wings. Instead, they want you to traverse these stages in so many ways. It's the first game that creates a full system where you could go from ground combat seamlessly into battling in the R-Wing. It reminds me a lot of Star Wars Battlefront, the first two games anyway, but taken to a whole other level. I don't think I've ever experienced a game where you could just straight up get onto the ground of a planet, blast some people with your lasers, hop into your spaceship, and battle in the sky. Battlefront 3 tried to do that before, well, getting Sid into the LucasArts pit, but enough mentioning of that game. It really tried to take the core formula of the series, which had already been well established by 2 games at this point, and stretched it beyond its normal means. Though sometimes that stretching can also reveal when to tighten some things up and where to pull back. Now, before I talk about the controls, I did pick the second option for the ground controls, which is the control option that makes it more of a twin-stick shooter like we have today. And I think the controls work fine enough, but could have some tweaks to make it more solid. The movement feels a bit slippery. I do like that it feels fast, but I wouldn't exactly call it fluid. Luckily, the lock-on can help a lot with this, and it locks on well enough to mitigate these problems, but I won't act like sometimes I have to wrangle the controls to work for me. Luckily, the flying controls work like a dream. The rail shooting sections are as smooth as ever. It's that classic Star Fox feel that I think any fan of the series would enjoy. See, Nintendo? You can make a new Star Fox level that isn't from Star Fox 64. Isn't that awesome? The all-range controls are also pretty good too. They're really easy to understand, and the developers worked in a sense of verticality pretty well. The Starwolf battle early on is a great example of how much you could do with this style of ship combat. Another great aspect of this is how you can have the grounded ship combat interact. There are quite a few moments where I'm on the ground as Fox and used a rocket launcher to shoot down enemy ships. I can't name any game off the top of my head where I've had to do that pretty frequently. Another major vehicle that comes back in this game is the Lancaster, and it is kinda weird to control. It feels like certain ways to move are too slow and other ones are too fast. For example, turning the left stick on this thing to make it turn takes forever, but then turning the camera to aim with the right stick is far too fast. I feel like I could barely lock on to any targets at all. I'll also say some of the maps in the story mode are a bit too maze-like. On the third mission, I failed the mission once because I think there needed to be some touch-ups on clarity in this level. A lot of the level is mostly grays and metallic reds, but all these ramps that stretch out all like vines across the map. It made it a bit too easy to get lost. When I lost the first time, it felt like I was kinda left to the mercy of the wild. In fact, I'd say a lot of the maps do suffer from visual sameness. They don't exactly place down a lot of memorable landmarks or visuals to make it clear where you're going. Like with the third mission, the mini-map didn't help me at all finding where I needed to go. Though I do think one idea that is very interesting is the might gauge, a bar that symbolizes how much your team or forces are being overwhelmed by the enemy during missions. Thus, to reset that clock, you'll have to go out of your way to hop in your R-Wing and clear out some enemies in the sky. I do think there could have been some more interesting ways to include this, but I think the base idea is fascinating, especially since usually Star Fox is just a 4-man team taking on entire battleships and armies. A lot of the guns in the game actually feel pretty good and give some great feedback. The only one I don't like is the main blaster itself. It's not horrible by any means, but for how the movement and combat of this game is, I don't think a charge-based gun is the move here. It doesn't help that you absolutely have to charge up even a little bit before sending out a shot. If you were allowed to shoot shots that didn't need to be charged up and then the charge shots were just an extra thing, something sort of like the Mega Buster from the Mega Man games, but in 3D, it could work. One of my minor grievances with this game is that there isn't a lot of R-Wing rail section missions in the campaign. I understand that they were probably more focused on making sure the ground combat and all-range mode worked better, but I feel like the on-rail levels are the most defining part of the Star Fox series. It's the thing most of us think about when we think of Star Fox. But the campaign of this game is also pretty short, only clocking in at 10 missions and being around 5 hours. So maybe they just couldn't find a way to put them in. Also, I'ma keep it a buck. This may be the best soundtrack to any Star Fox game ever. A lot of the songs here go fully into the sound of an epic sweeping orchestra. Honestly, it sounds like something ripped straight out of a John Williams soundtrack. But some of the other tracks are straight banging. The main theme they play when the drums come in goes pretty wild, I won't lie, and the main menu music goes way harder than it has any need to. But most of the music stays in this lane of beautifully made orchestral pieces that are pretty soothing and uplifting to listen to. Of course, no Star Fox game is complete without multiplayer, and man, this game's multiplayer is chaos incarnate in a good way. Every mechanic I talked about from the main story mode is here in the multiplayer mode and more. You and up to 3 friends can just go all out and destroy each other on foot, in R-Wings, Lancasters, you name it. But man, could you imagine if a modern Star Fox game took this gameplay concept online? That'd be the dream, wouldn't it? Being able to get on a map with about 50-something players, hop in your R-Wing and destroy some ships, but then get onto the ground floor and infiltrate your enemy's base? Come on, that sounds perfect, doesn't it? So overall, StarFox Assault is a pretty small package of a game. A hidden gem of the Star Fox franchise. Though in comparison to most of Nintendo's other series, I guess most of the Star Fox games are hidden gems. Is it a perfect game? No, I'd still say StarFox 64 is a more complete package. But to see this game just tossed aside by Nintendo when there's so many ideas from it that could still be explored, honestly, it frustrates me as a fan of the series and also kind of frustrates me as a creative myself. Instead, we're given yet another StarFox 64 remake. And I'm sorry to say this, that doesn't create hype for me anymore. I know some people are excited to even get a new Star Fox game, but to that I have to say, is this really what you're okay with? How many times will you allow Nintendo, and really any other company, to keep creating the same thing with minor tweaks before enough is enough? Who knows, maybe I'm being overly negative. And if I am and the remake actually adds a lot to the game, the story, and the world, then I'll be over the moon. But as of now, I see that Star Fox could have been clearly so much more if Nintendo just allowed it to be. But hey, at least we got Star Fox Assault as a proof of concept, right? And yeah, that's all I gotta say about that. You have all probably seen the Star Fox Direct by now, and yeah, I obviously don't have the greatest opinions of it, and I was already planning on making this video. In fact, I was pretty much done with playing the game at this point, and I was already in the script writing phase when this was done. I don't know, like I said, maybe the remake will be good, but I just don't care for another Star Fox 64 remake. We've already done this a couple of times. But with all that being said, I'll see you next time.